5 days after white Houstonians paraded through the city under a Confederate flag, several thousand black Houstonians marched through the same streets carrying the American flag. It was June 19th, 1866, exactly 1 year after enslaved Texans were told they were free.
2 black ministers rode at the head of the procession. Reverend Elias Dibble, a Methodist preacher, had been named president of the day. Sandy Parker, a Baptist minister, served as parade marshal. They started from a small wooden church on Travis Street between Bell and Clay and led 3,000 to 4,000 people through Main and Congress into the center of a city that wanted them to stay quiet. This was the earliest known public anniversary of Emancipation in Texas. It was a celebration, but it also worked like a political act.
To understand what that march meant, you need to know what had happened a year earlier and what had happened since. On June 19, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston with Union troops and issued a 3-paragraph military order. General Order Number 3 announced that all enslaved people in Texas were free and redefined the relationship between former masters and former slaves as employer and hired labor. Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation had been in effect for 2.5 years, but Texas was the most remote major slaveholding state in the Confederacy. Until Union soldiers physically occupied it, the proclamation was unenforceable. An estimated 250,000 enslaved people in Texas learned of their freedom that summer, many of them weeks or months after Granger read the order. The order changed what was legal. It did not change what was safe. In the year between Granger's announcement and the Houston parade, white Texans fought emancipation at every level. Freed people who tried to leave plantations were beaten or murdered. The Freedmen's Bureau recorded hundreds of violent incidents across the state. Former Confederates organized politically, and in Houston, the mood was visible in the streets. On June 14, 1866, white civic leaders held a firemen's parade through the city. They flew the Confederate flag and played Dixie. A statewide election was set for June 25th, and black Texans were barred from voting. Into that atmosphere, black Houstonians organized their march. They gathered at the Colored Methodist Church on Travis Street, a congregation that survives today as Trinity United Methodist, though the original building is long gone. Richard Sessom served as deputy marshal alongside Parker. The procession moved through the main commercial streets and out to a grove on the edge of the city, near a property belonging to a man named Lockhart. At the grove, speakers addressed the crowd. They sang spirituals. They ate barbecue, a tradition that would become inseparable from Juneteenth for the next 160 years. They danced. That evening, a ball was held, decorated with what the newspaper the next day called national emblems. 3,000 to 4,000 people had turned out, a remarkable number for a small southern city still under military occupation. We know these details because of a single newspaper article. The Houston Daily Evening Star, a white-owned paper, published a brief report the next morning under the headline, "Freedmen's Celebration." It named Dibble, Parker, and Sessom. It described the route, the flags, the speeches, the food, the music, and the ball. That article sat in fragile newsprint archives for more than 150 years. In 2026, Rice University historian Caleb McDaniel identified it as the earliest known record of a public June 19th anniversary celebration anywhere. Evidence that Houston, alongside Galveston, stood at the origin of the tradition that would become Juneteenth. The people who organized that march were building something meant to last. Within a few years, Parker entered Houston's early black civic life as one of the city's first black aldermen
Dibble helped organize the purchase of a 10-acre plot on the south side of the city in 1872. Land bought by formerly enslaved Houstonians, specifically so they would have a permanent place to celebrate June 19th. They called it Emancipation Park. It is the oldest park in Houston, and it is still used for Juneteenth gatherings today. The Confederate flag that flew over Houston 5 days before that first parade is gone. The newspaper that reported the celebration is nearly gone, one surviving copy. The wooden church on Travis Street was torn down long ago. But the ritual that Dibble, Parker, and several thousand unnamed people created on that June afternoon survived Jim Crow, segregation, decades of indifference, and a long stretch when most Americans outside Texas had never heard the word Juneteenth. It became a federal holiday in 2021. The people who started it never asked anyone's permission. They marched through a city that wanted them silent, and they turned a late military order into a tradition that outlasted everything built to stop them. A holiday can begin as an argument, memory made public before power is ready to bless it.